Chapter 1. Maeve. Maeve had learned long ago what her clan called her when they thought she couldn't hear. Spinster. Unclaimed. Too particular. Too slow. At 28, she was old enough that the whispers no longer bothered to soften themselves. Wolves her age were mated, anchored, expected. Even those who had lost partners wore their grief like proof they had once belonged to someone. Maeve belonged to the clan in every way that mattered, just not the way they valued most. She adjusted the strap of her armor as she moved through the outer ring of the settlement, the familiar weight settling across her shoulders. Leather, reinforced at the ribs and spine. Practical, unadorned. She'd chosen it herself years ago, long before tonight. A warrior's kit, not a wife's. She felt the looks as she passed, not hostile, not cruel, just quietly assessing, as if her presence reminded them of something unresolved. Maeve was useful. Maeve was reliable. Maeve was inconvenient, which was how she found herself assigned to the Border Watch. Again. The elders hadn't called it punishment. They never did. They'd framed it as necessity, as experience, as trust. But Maeve knew the truth as surely as she knew the path beneath her boots. The border was where you sent wolves who didn't quite fit. She left the last of the firelight behind her, the sounds of evening fading into the hush of the forest. Night pressed close here, familiar and comforting in its own way. The woods had always been easier than people. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, alert but calm, padding quietly alongside her thoughts the way it always did on patrol. Except tonight, it didn't settle. Maeve slowed, breath fogging faintly in the cool air. She told herself it was irritation, the unfairness of the assignment, the unspoken judgment behind it. She had trained younger wolves who were now raising children. She had fought beside mates who trusted her with their lives, but never invited her into their homes. Still, this restlessness was different. It tugged at her attention, subtle but persistent, like a thread pulled tight somewhere just behind her ribs. She passed the old boundary marker, a fallen stone half buried in moss, and paused. The border lay farther ahead, unmarked to the untrained eye. But wolves knew, always had. The forest itself changed there. Trees leaned inward, roots thickened. The air grew denser, holding scent longer, sound softer. Maeve had walked this approach many times. She knew exactly where to stop. Tonight, she didn't. She took another step. Her wolf lifted its head inside her, attention sharpening. Not alarm, not warning. Recognition. Maeve halted, heart stuttering. She grounded herself automatically, fingers flexing against the leather of her gloves as she focused on one breath in and one breath out. "You're tired," she told herself. "That's all." She turned slightly, angling her body away from the border as if the forest might respect her intention. The pull did not lessen. She took a step back. Nothing changed. A step forward. Her breath caught. The sensation bloomed slowly this time, unmistakable and warm, spreading through her chest like something long dormant, waking gently rather than violently. It was not hunger, not fear, not even desire. It was rightness. Maeve pressed a hand flat against her sternum, pulse racing beneath her palm. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." Her grandmother's voice rose in memory, unwanted and clear. Some bonds come late. Some wait until the wolf is strong enough to survive them. Maeve swallowed hard. She had never expected this, had never even allowed herself to wonder. Wolves like her didn't get stories whispered about them. They became lessons, examples of what happened when patience stretched too long. She took another step. The forest seemed to lean toward her. Scent reached her, then faint but distinct beneath the pine and damp earth. Warm, alive, unfamiliar in a way that made her wolf go utterly still. Not prey, not threat, other. Maeve stopped again, every instinct honed and balanced. Her training told her to retreat. Her assignment demanded vigilance, not curiosity. Her wolf did neither. It listened. A presence pressed gently against her awareness from beyond the trees. Not close, not advancing, watching, waiting. Maeve's spine straightened. She shifted her weight, grounding herself in her body, in the feel of the earth beneath her boots. Whatever this was, she would meet it as she had met everything else in her life, steady, unflinching. "Show yourself," she said quietly. The words were not a challenge. They were an invitation. Somewhere across the forbidden line, Bracken lifted his head. And for the first time in longer than he cared to remember, the wolf in the man inside him went utterly, irrevocably still. Chapter 2. Bracken. Maeve did not move. That alone told her how serious this was. Every instinct she had, honed over years of patrol and skirmish, urged reaction. Shift your stance, mark distance, prepare for threat. Instead, she stood rooted, breath measured, as if some deeper part of her had taken the reins and decided stillness was the safest response. The presence across the border did not advance. That unsettled her more than aggression would have. She could feel him now with startling clarity, not through sight or sound, but through something quieter and more intimate. Awareness pressed gently against her own, steady and contained, like a hand held just short of touching. Her wolf lifted fully inside her, not snarling, not bristling. Listening. Maeve's jaw tightened. This was wrong. Or it should have been. She had fought wolves from the rival clan before. Brief encounters at distance, claws flashing in moonlight, violence clean and fast because it had to be. There had always been fury in those moments. Hot, sharp, unmistakable. This felt nothing like that. She shifted her weight slightly, letting her fingers rest near the hilt of her blade. Not as a threat, as a comfort. Steel was honest. Steel did what it was told. "Border Patrol," she said, voice calm, measured. "You're standing where you shouldn't." The forest absorbed her words. For a moment she wondered if she had imagined everything. The pull, the warmth, the certainty. Then he stepped forward. He emerged from the trees slowly, deliberately, as if he understood exactly how much of himself to reveal at once. Moonlight caught on dark hair and broad shoulders, on the quiet strength in the way he carried his weight. He wore no armor, no visible weapons, only a worn cloak and the stillness of someone who had never needed to announce their power. Maeve's breath hitched despite herself, not because he was beautiful, because he was familiar. Something in her chest tightened, sharp and sudden, as recognition surged again, stronger now that she could see him. Her wolf pressed forward, ears pricked, attention absolute. "Mate." The word rose unbidden, unwelcome in its certainty. Maeve swallowed hard and lifted her chin. "You've crossed into our lands," she said. "That's not a mistake." His gaze flicked briefly to the ground beneath his boots, then back to her face. His eyes were dark, steady, holding no mockery and no fear. "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." His voice settled over her like low thunder, not loud but felt. It carried restraint layered thickly over something far more dangerous. Her wolf reacted instantly, a low, pleased awareness rippling through her. Maeve clenched her teeth, forcing control. "I don't recognize you," she said, "which means you don't belong here." A corner of his mouth curved. Not a smile exactly. Something more tired, more knowing. "My name is Bracken," he said, "and I've known you were here since before you crossed the line." Her pulse spiked. She hated how easily he read her, how little effort it seemed to take. "That doesn't give you permission," she replied. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken things. The forest seemed to lean closer, shadows shifting as if curious. Maeve studied him carefully now, the way she would any unknown wolf. He stood relaxed but not careless, balanced. Every line of his body suggested someone used to holding himself in check. Her grandmother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. The most dangerous wolves are the ones who know exactly what they are capable of. "What do you want?" Maeve asked. Bracken's gaze softened, just slightly, and that was somehow worse than hunger would have been. "I wanted to see if the pull was real," he said. "If I was imagining it." "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "I know I wasn't." The truth in his voice made her chest ache. Maeve drew a slow breath, steadying herself. This was not how border confrontations went. There were rules, lines, responses drilled into her bones, and yet none of them fit this moment. "You should leave," she said, even as every part of her resisted the words. "If my clan finds you here—" "I know," Bracken interrupted gently. "And if mine knew I was this close to your lands, they'd say the same." That gave her pause. "You're not afraid," she observed. "I am," he corrected. "Just not of you." Her wolf stirred again, restless now, unsettled by the truth of that statement. Maeve took one careful step closer to the border, not crossing it, testing it. The warmth flared instantly, bright and unmistakable. Bracken exhaled slowly, shoulders tensing as if he too felt the shift. "We were raised to believe this bond was a curse," Maeve said quietly. "Something that brought ruin." Bracken nodded once. "We were raised to believe it didn't exist at all." She huffed a short, humorless breath. "That figures." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Moonlight washed over the space between them, illuminating dust motes and drifting leaves, the quiet beauty of a world that did not care about clan borders or old bloodshed. Maeve became acutely aware of how close he was, of the way her wolf leaned toward him without permission, of the strange, aching calm that settled over her the longer she stood there. "This doesn't change anything," she said, more to herself than to him. Bracken's gaze held hers, steady and patient. "No," he agreed, "but it changes everything we'll have to resist." The words settled deep in her chest, heavy and undeniable. Maeve straightened, squaring her shoulders. "You should go," she said again, "before this becomes something we can't undo." Bracken hesitated, just long enough for her to see the cost of it. Then he inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll be back at the border, if you want answers." And before she could stop herself, before reason could reassert control, Maeve nodded. He stepped back into the trees, presence fading slowly rather than vanishing all at once. The forest seemed to exhale as he disappeared, sound returning in cautious increments. Maeve stood alone beneath the moon, heart pounding, wolf restless, the echo of his name settling into her bones. Bracken! She had crossed the border without leaving her land, and nothing would ever feel as simple again. Chapter 3. The Weight of Home. Maeve did not run back to the village. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she walked the long way around, following the outer patrol, a path that curved through familiar ground, forcing her body to remember routine even as her thoughts refused to settle. Her boots found the trail without effort. Her training held, even when her focus did not. Her wolf paced beneath her skin, unsettled in a way Maeve had never known. Not agitated, not afraid, just attentive, as if some part of it had been left behind at the border, ears still turned toward the trees where Bracken had vanished. Maeve ground her teeth and forced her breathing into a steady rhythm. Get it together. She had faced ambushes, bloodshed, loss. She had stood the line when others faltered. She would not unravel now over a pull she did not understand, and a man she had known for less than an hour. The village lights came into view slowly, lanterns glowing warm and low against the dark. The sight usually brought her a sense of belonging, a reminder that she had a place here, even if it was a narrow one. Tonight it felt like walking into a judgment she hadn't agreed to stand before. As she passed through the outer gate, a few heads turned, not with alarm, with recognition. Maeve nodded to those she knew, offering the same quiet acknowledgement she always did. She was good at this part. The careful balance of approachability and distance, useful but not inviting questions. One of the younger wolves, barely past first shift, glanced at her with open curiosity. Maeve ignored it. She made it 3 steps farther before a familiar voice stopped her. "You were late." Maeve turned. Edrin stood near the central fire, arms crossed, expression neutral but watchful. He was older than her by a handful of years, mated young, respected without effort, a warrior who fit easily into the life expected of him. "We had no sightings," Maeve said evenly. "The forest was quiet." Edrin's gaze flicked briefly to the tree line behind her, then back to her face. "The border has been restless lately." "So it wasn't just her." Maeve inclined her head. "That's why you posted me there, I imagine." A pause. Just long enough to confirm what she already knew. "Someone had to take the watch," Edrin said. "And you don't have obligations." There it was. Not cruel. Never cruel. Just stated like fact. Maeve felt her wolf bristle, a flash of irritation rippling through her before she smoothed it away. She had learned long ago that reacting only confirmed the quiet assumptions others made about her. "I'll take first watch again tomorrow," she said. Edrin hesitated. "You don't need to." "I'm capable," Maeve replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Unless you doubt that." He didn't. That was the problem. "No," he said finally. "I don't." The exchange ended there, but the weight of it lingered as Maeve moved deeper into the village. Conversations resumed behind her. Life went on. She reached her dwelling. Small, tidy, practical. No shared hearth. No signs of another wolf's presence. She had once taken pride in how clean and orderly it was. Tonight, it felt too quiet. Maeve removed her armor piece by piece, hanging it carefully, muscle memory carrying her through the motions. When she finally sat, hands resting on her knees, the stillness rushed in all at once. That was when the bond stirred again. Warmth unfurled beneath her ribs, gentler now, threaded with awareness rather than urgency. Images flickered unbidden through her mind. Moonlight through trees, steady eyes, a presence that had felt anchored. Bracken. Maeve exhaled sharply and pressed her palm flat against her chest. "No," she whispered again, as if repetition might make it true. Her grandmother's face rose in her memory, lined and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who had survived by understanding what others refused to name. "The wolf doesn't choose convenience," she used to say. "It chooses truth." Maeve had never been afraid of truth. But this? This felt like something that would cost her everything she had learned to hold steady. She lay back on her narrow bed and stared up at the rafters, listening to the muted sounds of the village settling for the night. Somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the border she had crossed and recrossed in her mind 12 times already, Bracken existed, not close, not gone, waiting. Maeve closed her eyes, her wolf finally curling into a restless, uneasy sleep. Tomorrow, she would return to the border, and this time she knew walking away would not be as simple. Chapter 4 it was again as Bracken of the Thorn Vale. Bracken did not return to his clan by the shortest path. He moved through the forest, the way only wolves who had learned patience could. Quiet, deliberate, never wasting motion. The moon rode high above the canopy now, silver light slipping through the branches in fractured patterns that painted his skin and cloak in shadow. His wolf remained close to the surface, alert but contained. That alone was remarkable. Normally, after crossing so near the border, the wolf would have pressed harder, urging dominance, territory, possession. Tonight, it did none of those things. It stayed watchful, listening, as if it understood that what had been set into motion required care rather than force. "Mate?" The word settled into Bracken's chest with the same quiet certainty it had carried since the moment he had felt her step across the line. It had not arrived with urgency or hunger. It had arrived like recognition long delayed. And that, more than anything, unsettled him. The Thorned Vale came into view gradually, low firelight flickering through the trees, the scent of smoke and familiar wolves thickening the air. His clan's territory felt heavier than Maeve's land had, dense with history and expectation. Bracken crossed into it without hesitation. He had been born here, raised here, forged into what the clan needed him to be. That was precisely why he had never expected fate to choose him. Bracken. He slowed as a voice called his name, calm but edged with warning. Rowan stepped out from the shadows near the central fire, tall and broad, his expression sharp-eyed. Rowan had grown beside him, fought beside him, bled beside him. A brother in all but blood. "You were near the border," Rowan said, not a question. Bracken inclined his head slightly. "I was." Rowan's jaw tightened. "You know what the elders will say." "I do." "And you went anyway." "Yes." Rowan studied him in silence, gaze flicking briefly over Bracken's posture, his stillness, the way his wolf sat unusually quiet beneath the surface. Understanding dawned slowly. Rowan said finally, "that kind of reason." Bracken did not deny it. The Thorn Veil did not speak of bonds the way other clans did. They acknowledged strength, loyalty, bloodline. Bonds were inconvenient things, dangerous ones. Lesson early. His mother had been mated beyond the veil, a choice that had cost her her place, her protection, and eventually her life. The clan remembered her as a cautionary tale, not a loss. Bracken remembered her as warmth and laughter, and a strength that had not broken even when the world demanded it. It was why he had never looked for a mate, why he had trained harder than anyone else, why he had learned to hold his wolf in check, to master instinct until restraint became second nature, and now fate had chosen him anyway. "You'll stay away from her," Rowan said quietly. "Whatever this is." Bracken's gaze lifted, steady and unflinching. "I won't harm her." "That's not what I said." Bracken understood the difference. "She is not prey," he replied, "nor a weakness." Rowan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "That's not how the elders will see it." "They don't have to," Bracken said. Silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. Rowan studied him a moment longer, then nodded once. "Be careful," he said. "You carry more weight here than you pretend." Bracken turned away before the warning could sink deeper. Later, alone beneath the open sky, he removed his cloak and sat at the edge of the veil, staring toward the dark stretch of forest that marked the border beyond which Maeve lived. His wolf stirred, restless now, aware of distance. Not yet, Bracken told it. He had seen the way she held herself, the discipline, the quiet ache of someone valued but never chosen. He recognized that kind of loneliness too well to mistake it. The bond did not demand action. It waited. Bracken closed his eyes, resting his forearms on his knees, letting the night settle around him. Tomorrow he would return to the border, not to claim, not to cross, only to stand. Some truths required patience before they could be trusted. Chapter 5. The Second Crossing. Maeve did not sleep. She lay awake long after the village had gone quiet, staring at the faint shadows cast by the rafters above her bed. Each time she drifted close to rest, the same awareness tugged her back. Steady, patient, impossible to ignore, not calling, waiting. When dawn finally came, pale and cool, she rose without reluctance. Fatigue sat lightly on her shoulders, familiar and manageable. She'd lived with less sleep before. This felt different. Not draining, but charged, as if her body had been holding itself in readiness all night. She armored herself carefully, more out of ritual than necessity. The leather felt grounding beneath her hands, the weight a reminder of who she was and what she had earned. A warrior, a border guard, not a girl chasing impossible things. As she stepped outside, the forest greeted her with the quiet attentiveness it always did. Birds stirred, leaves whispered, the path awaited her. No one stopped her this time. Whether that was trust or indifference, Maeve didn't care to guess. The walk to the border felt longer than it had the night before. She noticed things she usually passed without thought, the way the earth softened beneath her boots, the faint scars left in tree bark from long-healed conflicts, the subtle shift in scent as she moved farther from the heart of the clan's territory. Her wolf paced steadily inside her now, not restless but alert, ears forward, attention unwavering. Maeve slowed as she approached the place where the forest began to change. The border. She stopped well short of it this time. She told herself it was discipline, caution, the sensible thing to do. The pull answered her restraint with quiet persistence. She took one step forward. Nothing dramatic happened. No surge, no shock. Just warmth, gentle and spreading, settling beneath her ribs as if her body had been waiting for permission to acknowledge it. Her breath deepened without conscious effort. Another step. The air thickened. Sound dulled. The forest leaned closer, roots pressing against the soil like fingers curling inward. Maeve paused again, heart steady but focused. She was acutely aware now of every sensation. The flex of muscle, the weight of her armor, the faint brush of her cloak against her calves. And then she felt him. Not suddenly, gradually. A presence already there, as if he had been standing in the same place long before she arrived. She lifted her gaze. Bracken stood just beyond the border, where shadow and light met in careful balance. He had positioned himself deliberately, close enough that the bond stirred warmly, far enough that no line had been crossed. He did not move when he saw her. That restraint settled something inside her that she hadn't known was tense. "You came back," he said. His voice carried easily through the trees, low and calm, like something shaped to this place. "I was assigned here," Maeve replied, though the words felt thinner than the truth. "I don't get to refuse." Bracken inclined his head. "Neither do I, it seems." They stood like that for a long moment, neither advancing, neither retreating. The space between them felt deliberate, charged with things neither of them had named aloud. Maeve's wolf lifted fully now, stepping closer to the surface. She felt the echo of it in her chest, the way it recognized his presence, not as threat, but as alignment. Across the border, Bracken's wolf stirred in response. She could sense it then, large, steady, watching her with the same careful awareness its human half held. Not prowling, not challenging, waiting. "I should warn you," Maeve said quietly, "if my clan notices patterns, if they think you're more than a shadow at the border." "They already watch me," Bracken said. "I don't give them many reasons to do so." That told her more than he intended. Maeve shifted her weight, letting her hand fall away from her blade. Not in surrender, in trust. "What happens if we don't fight this?" she asked. Bracken did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was thoughtful, not eager. "Then the bond will settle," he said. "Slowly, the way it's meant to. Not as hunger, as balance." Maeve exhaled, something inside her loosening at the words. The wolves understood before they did. Her wolf pressed closer beneath her skin, calm and certain. Across the border, Bracken's wolf stepped into the light, just enough for Maeve to see the outline of a great, four-legged shape among the trees. Magnificent, grounded, fully wolf. No distortion, no monstrosity. Just power held in quiet check. Maeve met Bracken's gaze again, something steady and unafraid settling between them. "Tomorrow," she said softly. "Same place?" Bracken's mouth curved faintly, not quite a smile. "I'll be here," he replied. They did not cross. They did not touch. And yet, as Maeve turned back toward her clan's land, the pull remained. Not urgent, not demanding. Present. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Maeve did not feel like something essential was missing. Only waiting. Chapter 6. The Shape of Waiting. The change did not announce itself. Maeve noticed it first in the quiet moments. those small spaces between tasks where her mind usually drifted toward restlessness or fatigue. Instead, there was steadiness, a sense of alignment she had never quite known how to name before. Her wolf no longer paced at night. It rested, not asleep exactly, but settled in a way that felt deliberate, as if it had found a place within her it trusted to hold the weight it carried. Maeve woke each morning with her muscles loose, her breath deep, the sharp edge of tension she had always assumed was simply part of her nature, softened to something manageable. That unsettled her more than exhaustion ever had. She noticed it during training, too. Her movements flowed more easily, strikes landing with precision instead of force alone. Younger wolves sparring against her found themselves disarmed faster than usual, her balance unshakable even when pressed. "You're distracted," Idrin observed one afternoon, watching her reset after a clean disarm. "Or focused. Hard to tell which." Maeve wiped sweat from her brow and sheathed her blade. "I'm doing my job." "You always do," he said, "but something's changed." She met his gaze evenly. "Does it concern you?" Edrin hesitated, then shook his head. "No, just be careful." The warning followed her the rest of the day. That evening she found herself walking the border path again, boots striking the earth in a rhythm that had become familiar over the last few days. The meetings had settled into a pattern, not planned, not spoken of beyond the simple understanding that they would both return. Waiting. Maeve slowed as she neared the forest's edge, breath steady, senses open. The pull was there immediately now, no longer startling but unmistakable, a quiet line drawn straight through her chest. She did not cross. Bracken stood on the other side, exactly where he had been the day before. She wondered if his clan noticed the change in him, the way hers had begun to notice it in her. "You're calmer," he said after a moment. "So are you," Maeve replied. Bracken's gaze lingered on her a fraction longer than necessary, as if confirming something for himself. "The bond is settling." Maeve nodded. "I feel it." They stood in companionable silence, the forest holding them gently, wolves attentive but unagitated beneath the surface. She became aware of how rarely she felt the need to fill quiet with words anymore. "Does your clan know?" Maeve asked. "Enough to watch," Bracken answered. "Not enough to act." "That won't last," she said. "No," he agreed. "It won't." Maeve shifted her stance, glancing briefly toward the trees behind her. "They sent me here again today. Same watch, same stretch." "That sounds like trust, Mythic," Bracken said. She let out a short, humorless breath. "That's one word for it." Bracken studied her carefully. "You carry responsibility easily." Maeve's jaw tightened. "I carry it because someone has to." The words slipped out sharper than she intended. She hadn't realized how close they sat to the surface until she spoke them aloud. Bracken did not press. He simply nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. The wolves stirred then, hers first, then his, attention sharpening as something shifted deeper in the forest. Not danger. Awareness, the sense of being observed. Maeve straightened. "We're being watched." "Yes," Bracken said, "but not by the kind that attack without cause." That did not reassure her as much as it might have. "I won't cross," she said quietly. "Not yet." Bracken's expression softened, not with disappointment, but with approval. "Nor will I ask you to." That mattered more than she expected. They parted the way they always did, without touch, without promises, without breaking the line between them. And yet, as Maeve turned back toward her clan's land, she felt no emptiness. Only the steady presence of something growing stronger by being allowed to remain unfinished. Waiting, she was beginning to understand, was not absence. It was choice. Chapter 7. Lines that notice. Maeve felt it before anyone said a word, the shift in how conversations paused when she passed, the way eyes lingered a moment too long before looking away. Wolves who had sparred easily with her weeks ago now measured her more carefully, as if trying to place something that had changed without asking its name. She had learned long ago how to live with scrutiny. This felt different. She was checking the outer armory when Edrin approached, his steps deliberate, expression carefully neutral. He did not speak at first, just stood beside her, watching as she catalogued supplies with steady efficiency. "You've been on border watch 5 days straight," he said finally. Maeve did not look up. "I'm assigned where I'm needed." "That's not an answer," Edrin replied. She set the last blade into its rack and turned to face him. "What do you want me to say?" Edrin exhaled slowly. "The elders are asking questions." Maeve felt her wolf stir, not defensively but attentively. "What kind of questions, wise?" she asked. "The kind that start with 'why you,'" he said, "and end with 'how long this has been going on.'" Maeve kept her expression composed, even as the weight of his words settled into her chest. She had known this moment would come. Borders did not remain quiet forever. "I haven't broken any rules," she said. "No," Edrin agreed. "But you're standing very close to them." That was closer to the truth than he realized. Later that evening, Maeve walked the border path with heightened awareness. Every sound seemed sharper, every shift of shadow more deliberate. Her wolf remained calm but alert, as if sensing the narrowing of space around her. Bracken was already there when she arrived. He took one look at her face and understood. "They're watching you," he said quietly. "Yes," Maeve replied, more openly now. Bracken's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. "Then we'll need to be more careful." Maeve studied him, the bond steady and warm between them. "Careful has a cost." "So does being seen," he said. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. "If my clan decides I'm compromised—" "They won't," Bracken said too quickly. Maeve met his gaze. "You don't know them?" Bracken held her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. "Then I'll trust you to tell me when the danger becomes more than rumor." The wolves stirred again, both of them now, attention sharpening toward the deeper forest. Maeve exhaled softly. "They're not the only ones watching." "No," Bracken agreed, "but they may be the ones who act first." Silence stretched between them, heavier than before. The border no longer felt like a quiet threshold. It felt like a line being tested. Maeve squared her shoulders. "I won't apologize for this," she said. "Whatever it is." Bracken's expression softened, respect unmistakable. "Nor should you." For the first time since the bond had settled into her awareness, Maeve felt something new beneath the steadiness. Resolve. Chapter 8. The Circle of Elders. They summoned her at dusk. No runner, no urgency. Just a quiet word passed along the paths Maeve had walked her entire life, delivered with the same careful neutrality the clan used when it wanted to remind someone where power truly sat. Maeve did not rush. She cleaned her blade, oiled the leather of her armor, and braided her hair back with deliberate care. Not vanity, readiness. If she was going to stand before the elders, she would do so as she always had. Composed, unflinching, impossible to dismiss as careless or naive. The circle fire burned low when she arrived, embers glowing red beneath the ash. The elders stood rather than sat, their silhouettes ringed by shadow and flame. Faces she had known since childhood regarded her now with a kind of quiet appraisal that tightened her chest. She inclined her head. "You called for me." "We did," said Althea, her voice calm and edged with age. "You've been walking the border." Maeve met her gaze steadily. "As assigned." A murmur rippled faintly through the circle. "You have taken more shifts than requested," another elder said. "You have not asked for relief." "I have not needed it," Maeve replied. Silence followed. They were weighing her words, turning them like stones in their hands. Maeve felt her wolf stir, not bristling, not aggressive, simply present. A quiet strength she had earned over years of holding herself steady when others faltered. The border is not a place for habits, Althea said. It invites complications. Maeve's jaw tightened. The border is a place for vigilance. A few brows lifted. Surprise flickered across one or two faces. You have always been capable, said Elder Rin, his voice measured. But capability is not the same as wisdom. Maeve drew a slow breath. Then teach me what I'm missing. That earned her a longer look. Althea stepped closer, eyes sharp and searching. Tell us, Maeve. What have you noticed out there? Maeve considered her answer carefully. The truth pressed close, warm and steady beneath her ribs. She chose her words with precision. The forest is quieter, she said. Not empty, watchful. Whatever tension existed there before is changing. Changing how? Rin asked. Settling, Maeve replied. The word hung in the air. That is not a reassuring observation, Althea said softly. Maeve lifted her chin. Neither is ignoring it. A beat passed. You have not crossed the border, Rin said. No, Maeve agreed. You have not pursued contact. No. And yet, Althea said, you speak as though something has already answered you. Maeve met her gaze squarely. Something has. The circle went still. This was the moment. The one her grandmother had warned her about without ever naming. The moment when restraint became visible and therefore suspect. You are 28, Althea said at last. Unmated, unclaimed. You stand where others would falter, and yet you do not seek what the clan values most. Maeve felt the familiar weight of that assessment press against her ribs. The years of quiet judgment, the way usefulness had always been offered as consolation. I've given the clan everything it asked of me, Maeve said evenly, and more. That is not in question, Rin said. Then what is? Maeve asked. Althea's gaze softened, just slightly. Whether your steadiness comes from discipline or from something that might draw you beyond our protection. Maeve understood then that this was not about rules. It was about fear. I am not reckless, Maeve said, and I am not weak. No one argued. Althea nodded once. You will continue your border watch, but not alone. Maeve's pulse ticked higher. You don't trust me? We trust you, Althea said. We do not trust what waits beyond the line. Maeve inclined her head, accepting the compromise, even as resolve settled deeper into her bones. As you wish, she said. She turned and left the circle without waiting to be dismissed, her back straight, her steps steady. The forest greeted her again as she walked away, darker now, the pull familiar and calm. Somewhere beyond the border, Bracken would feel it, the tightening of space, the narrowing of time. The choice was no longer private, bottom of form, and Maeve knew with steadfast certainty that she would not be the one to step back first. Chapter 9. Shared ground. They paired her with Taven. Maeve knew him well enough. He was steady, observant, and young enough to still believe the rules existed for clear reasons. A good wolf, a loyal one, exactly the kind of presence the elders would choose if they wanted eyes without accusation. You'll take the eastern stretch tonight, Taven said as they left the village together, tone respectful but guarded. I'll walk the tree line. Maeve nodded. That keeps us visible without crowding the border. Taven glanced at her, surprised. You've been thinking about this. I always do, Maeve replied. The forest felt different with company, not hostile, not unwelcome, just less forgiving. Maeve was keenly aware of every movement now, every pause, every breath she took as they moved deeper along the familiar path. Her wolf remained calm, but attentive in a way that felt newly disciplined. Careful, she told herself. Not afraid, just careful. They reached the outer markers just as the last of the daylight slipped away, the forest darkening into layered shadow. Maeve stopped where she always did, boots planted firmly on her side of the line. Taven slowed beside her, gaze sweeping the trees beyond. It's quiet. Yes, Maeve said. but not empty. He gave her a sideways look. You say that like it means something. Maeve didn't answer. Across the border, something shifted, not movement, awareness. Maeve felt it immediately. The gentle tightening beneath her ribs, the familiar warmth that had become as much a part of her as breath. She kept her expression neutral, posture relaxed, even as her wolf lifted its head beneath her skin. Bracken was there. She did not look for him right away. She had learned that doing so too quickly drew attention. Instead, she focused on the forest in general, letting her gaze wander naturally until it settled where shadow deepened between the trees. He stood farther back than usual. That was the first thing she noticed. The second was the tension in him, not visible to anyone else but unmistakable to her. The bond carried it clearly, a quiet strain layered beneath his steady presence. He had sensed Taven. Maeve exhaled slowly, grounding herself. You see something? Taven asked. No, she said truthfully. I feel something. Taven's brow furrowed. That doesn't make me feel better. It shouldn't, Maeve replied dryly. She shifted her stance, now subtly angling her body to block Taven's direct line of sight without appearing deliberate. Years of training made the motion seamless, protective without being obvious. Across the border, Bracken did not move. He did not step closer. He did not retreat. The restraint in that choice sent a quiet echo through the bond, steadying her wolf even as it sharpened her awareness. Maeve risked a brief glance. Their eyes met through the trees. Nothing passed between them that could be seen. No gesture, no sign. But beneath the surface, understanding settled. Not tonight. She felt his acknowledgement like a calm hand at her back. Taven shifted beside her, weight redistributing as he continued his watch. You've done this stretch a lot, he said casually. You always stand right here. Maeve nodded. It's where the forest changes. Taven studied the ground, then the trees. I don't see it. You wouldn't, Maeve said. Not unless you were looking for it. He huffed a quiet laugh. You always say things like that. Maeve didn't respond. Minutes passed, then more. The night settled fully around them, the forest resuming its quiet rhythm. Gradually the tension eased, not because the threat had passed, but because the boundaries had been respected. When Maeve finally felt the warmth beneath her ribs soften, she knew Bracken had stepped back into deeper shadow. Not gone, waiting. On the walk back to the village, Taven spoke again. The elders trust you, you know. Maeve kept her eyes on the path. They trust what I represent. That's not the same thing, he said. She didn't answer, but the truth of it settled heavily in her chest. That night, as Maeve lay awake once more beneath her rafters, she felt the bond steady and patient, no longer urging her toward the border. It was learning, as she was, how to survive being seen. Chapter 10. What the Wolves Know. Bracken felt the shift before he heard the summons. The thorn veil had its own rhythm, one he had learned to read as easily as breath. When the fires burned lower than usual, when voices softened instead of rising, when the air itself seemed to tighten, as if bracing. He did not bother to pretend surprise when Rowan found him. They want you at the stone, Rowan said quietly. Now. Bracken nodded once, already rising. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, not agitated, but alert in a way that felt deliberate, purposeful. They had noticed. The central stone stood where the veil narrowed, a place where decisions were made without ceremony. Elders gathered there when they wanted truth without softness. Bracken stepped into the circle alone. You've been walking near the border, Elder Core said, voice low and even. Often. Yes, Bracken replied. A murmur rippled faintly. You do not hunt there, Core continued, nor patrol, and yet you return. Bracken met his gaze steadily. I go where the forest calls me. That earned him sharper looks. The forest does not call without reason, said Elder Sella. What have you found? Bracken considered his answer. He could lie. He was good at silence. At omission, his wolf shifted, heavy and present. No threat, he said finally. No encroachment. And yet, Cor said, you are changed. Bracken did not deny it. Silence stretched. Speak plainly, Sella said. You were raised better than riddles. Bracken inhaled slowly. There is a bond. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. With whom? Cor demanded. Bracken's jaw tightened. Across the border. The elders exchanged glances, old tension rising like a long-buried scar. That line was drawn for a reason, Sella said sharply. So were the bonds, Bracken replied, voice steady. Long before the line. A dangerous statement. Rowan shifted at the edge of the circle, unease flickering across his face. Bracken ignored it. You have not crossed, Cor said. No. You have not claimed, Sela added. No. And yet your wolf is restless, Cor said. Do you believe restraint alone will be enough? Bracken met their eyes one by one. I believe in choice. That, more than anything, unsettled them. At the same moment, miles away, Maeve felt her wolf rise sharply beneath her skin. Not fear, urgency. She had just finished evening drills when the sensation struck. Heat blooming beneath her ribs, awareness sharpening to a painful edge. She stilled mid-motion, breath catching as something tugged insistently through the bond. Bracken. She didn't think. She moved. Maeve stripped her armor with quick efficiency and took the border path at a pace that would have drawn comment on any other night. The forest opened to her without resistance, the pull guiding her as surely as instinct. She stopped short of the line, breath unsteady. Across the border, Bracken was already there, not standing, shifted. A massive four-legged wolf stood in the clearing beyond the trees, coat dark as wet earth, eyes bright with awareness. Power radiated from him. Not aggression, but presence held tightly in check. Maeve's breath left her in a rush. Her wolf surged forward, answering without hesitation. She dropped to one knee, grounding herself, hands pressed against the earth as her wolf brushed the surface of her skin. Not demanding release, simply near. The bond pulsed between them, steady and fierce. Bracken's wolf took one step forward, then stopped. The restraint in that pause echoed through Maeve like a vow. She lifted her gaze, meeting the animal's eyes with calm certainty. No fear, no challenge, recognition. Her wolf pressed closer, content to remain within her, acknowledging what stood across the border without needing to mirror it. For a long moment, the forest held them like breath between heartbeats. Then Bracken shifted back, human once more, cloak settling around him as if the transformation had been nothing more than a truth briefly revealed. That was dangerous, Maeve said quietly. Yes, Bracken agreed, and necessary. She rose slowly, heart pounding. They know. They do, he said, and now the wolves do too. Maeve exhaled, steadying herself. Then this isn't just ours anymore. No, Bracken said, but it's still ours to choose. They stood there, closer than ever, the border no longer feeling like a barrier so much as a question. And for the first time since the bond had awakened, Maeve felt it shift, not toward patience or restraint, but toward inevitability. Chapter 11. The Cost of Standing. Maeve was summoned again before the sun had fully set. This time, there was no pretense of neutrality. No careful wording passed through the village paths. Edrin met her just beyond the training ring, his expression tight, eyes dark with concern. They felt it, he said quietly. Whatever happened last night, the elders felt it. Maeve did not ask how. She already knew. The bond had flared too brightly to remain contained. Her wolf still hummed beneath her skin, steady but alert, as if aware that something essential was about to be tested. Are you coming with me? Maeve asked. Edrin hesitated. They asked for you alone. Of course they had. Maeve nodded once and continued toward the circle fire without another word. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from fear, but from the weight of what she would no longer be able to avoid naming. The elders stood as before, faces carved by years of leadership and loss, but something in their posture had shifted. They were not merely assessing her now, they were bracing. "You cross no border," Althea said as Maeve approached, "and yet the forest stirred." Maeve inclined her head. "Yes." "You did not shift," Rin added, "and yet your wolf answered." "Yes." Silence pressed in. "You have always been disciplined," Althea said slowly. "That is why we trusted you with the edge of our lands, but discipline does not explain what we sensed." Maeve met her gaze squarely. "Then perhaps it's time we stop pretending it should." A ripple of unease passed through the circle. "You speak carefully," Rin said, "as if you are choosing each word for a reason." "I am," Maeve replied, "because once I speak plainly, I cannot take it back." Althea studied her, something old and sharp in her eyes. "Then speak." Maeve drew a steady breath. "There is a bond," she said. "It did not ask my permission. It did not consider our borders, but it has not made me reckless, and it has not weakened my loyalty." "And yet it draws you beyond us," Rin said. Maeve shook her head. "No, it asked me to stand exactly where I already do, at the line." The words settled into the circle, heavy with truth. "You are unmated," Althea said quietly. "You have been patient." Maeve felt the familiar ache of that word press against her ribs. She had carried it long enough to know its weight. "I have been waiting," she said instead. "There is a difference." A long silence followed. At last Althea spoke again. "If you choose this bond openly, there will be consequences." Maeve did not flinch. "There already are." "You may lose standing," Rin said. "Trust, protection." Maeve lifted her chin. "I have spent my life protecting this clan. I will not pretend that choosing truth makes me less worthy of it." The elders exchanged glances, tension threading between them. "You are asking us to accept what we were taught to fear," Althea said. "No," Maeve replied. "I am asking you to see what has always been here." Her wolf stirred, calm and present, lending her steadiness rather than force. At last, Althea exhaled. "You will remain on border watch," she said, "but the next choice will not be yours alone." Maeve understood immediately. "You mean to confront them?" "Yes," Rin said. "If bonds are to cross bloodlines again, it will not be done in shadow." Maeve's pulse quickened, not with fear, with resolve. "Then let it be done carefully," she said, "and without violence." Althea's gaze sharpened. "That will depend on him." Maeve met her eyes without hesitation. "Then you will find him as restrained as I am." She turned and left the circle without waiting for dismissal, heart pounding, wolf steady. When she reached the border that night, Bracken was already there. He read her face instantly. "They're moving," he said. "Yes," Maeve replied, "and they want you seen." Bracken exhaled slowly, eyes darkening. "Then the waiting is over." Maeve stepped closer to the line, stopping just short of crossing. "Not the bond," she said. "Just the secrecy." Bracken studied her for a long moment, something fierce and proud stirring beneath his calm. "I will not let them make you pay alone," he said. Maeve's chest tightened at the certainty in his voice. "I know," she replied. The forest leaned in around them, the border no longer silent, no longer empty, and for the first time Maeve felt something settle fully into place. Whatever came next, she would not face it unseen. Chapter 12. When Lines Are Watched. They chose the clearing at dawn, not because it was neutral, nothing about the border ever had been, but because it was visible. Open enough that no one could claim surprise, and old enough that the trees themselves bore witness to past crossings, past bloodshed, passed oaths that had outlived the wolves who made them. Maeve arrived first. She stood at the edge of her clan's land, armor clean but unadorned, posture steady. Edrin and 2 others flanked her at a respectful distance, not guards so much as presents. The elders waited farther back, near the tree line, their faces unreadable. Maeve felt the bond immediately. Bracken was near, not hidden, not waiting in shadow. He emerged from the opposite side of the clearing with the same deliberate calm she had come to expect. Cloak loose around his shoulders, hands empty and visible. Behind him, the thorned veil wolves spread out in a loose arc, not aggressive, but unmistakably alert. The forest went quiet. Maeve's wolf lifted, fully attentive, not straining against her restraint, but standing with her in it. She did not look away as Bracken crossed into the open space and stopped precisely at the borderline. He did not cross it. That mattered. A murmur rippled through both groups. Surprise, unease, recognition. "He stands where he should not," one of Maeve's elders said quietly. "And yet he does not step where he must not," another replied. Bracken inclined his head toward Maeve's elders first, a gesture of respect that did not bend his spine. Then he looked at Maeve, not with hunger, with acknowledgement. "This meeting was not my idea," Bracken said, voice carrying easily through the clearing. "But I will not refuse it." Althea stepped forward, gaze sharp. "You acknowledge the bond." "I do," Bracken replied. "And I acknowledge the harm done when bonds were treated as conquest." A stir passed through the thorned veil wolves at his words. Not disagreement, but surprise at their being spoken aloud. Maeve felt the weight of it settle into the space between the clans. "You have not claimed her," Althea said. "No," Bracken agreed. "Nor will I without her choosing it openly." Maeve's breath steadied. Her wolf pressed closer, content and grounded. "And yet you draw near our lands," Rin said. Bracken met his gaze calmly. "Only as near as restraint allows." Silence followed. Then Maeve stepped forward, not crossing the line, standing with it at her back. "I am not coerced," she said clearly. "I am not diminished. The bond has sharpened me, not weakened me." Some of the younger wolves shifted, uncertain. Others watched her with new attention, not suspicion, but recognition. "You ask us to trust what we cannot control," Althea said. Maeve nodded. "You trusted me with the border long before this." That landed. The clearing held its breath. At last Althea spoke again. "This bond will not be tested by secrecy, nor by force." Her gaze moved between Maeve and Bracken. "If it is to exist, it will do so under watch." Maeve felt the bond pulse, not with triumph, but with relief. Bracken bowed his head slightly. "That is all I ask." The wolves stirred then, not violently, not eagerly, but in recognition. Maeve felt her wolf rise in quiet harmony with Bracken's, the presence of 2 forces aligning without needing dominance. The elders withdrew slowly, tension lingering but contained. The thorned veil wolves followed suit, casting measured glances back at the border as they retreated. Bracken remained. Maeve did too. The clearing emptied around them until only forest and sky remained. "You stood your ground," Bracken said softly. "So did you," Maeve replied. They did not touch. They did not cross. But for the first time, the space between them felt claimed, not by possession, but by permission, and the forest, old and patient, seemed to accept that. Chapter 13. Learning the shape of each other. They did not meet the next day. That was deliberate. Maeve felt the absence immediately, not as loss, but as space newly defined. The bond remained steady beneath her ribs, warm and present, no longer tugging her toward the border with insistence. Instead, it waited, allowed, trusted. She had never known anything to do that before. When she trained that morning, her movements were precise but unhurried. She noticed how easily her breath fell into rhythm now, how her wolf moved with her instead of beneath her. The younger wolves watched her differently, not with suspicion, but with something closer to curiosity. Not fear, not reverence, recognition. That unsettled her more than judgment ever had. It was 2 days later when she returned to the border alone. Not on assignment, not summoned. She came because she chose to. The forest greeted her like an old companion, shadows shifting softly as she followed the familiar path. There was no urgency in her steps this time, no repeated stopping and starting. She walked steadily, as if the land itself had finally aligned beneath her feet. Bracken was already there, not waiting at the line, but seated against the trunk of a broad oak on his side of the border, cloak folded at his side. He rose when he sensed her approach, but not quickly, not as if afraid she might vanish. "You didn't come yesterday," Maeve said. "No," Bracken replied. "Neither did you." Maeve exhaled, something easing in her chest. It felt necessary. Bracken nodded. The bond needed to breathe. They stood a few paces apart, the border still between them, but less rigid now, less like a wall and more like a seam. "I've been walking this land my entire life," Maeve said quietly, "and yet it feels different lately, like it's watching me back." "It always has," Bracken said. "You're just listening now." Maeve studied him, really looked this time, the faint scar along his jaw, the wear at the cuffs of his sleeves, the stillness that suggested power never wasted. He did not carry himself like someone waiting to claim. He carried himself like someone who knew how to stay. "My clan thinks patience is the same as hesitation," she said. "They think restraint is weakness," Bracken replied. "Mine does too." Maeve huffed a soft breath. Funny, that. They spoke then, not of bonds or borders, but of small things, of the way the forest changed scent after rain, of paths that only appeared in certain seasons, of wolves who learned early to listen instead of rush. Time passed without being counted. At some point, Maeve realized her wolf had fully settled, not pressed to the surface, but present in a way that felt content. "This is what it's meant to be like," she said softly. More realization than question. "Yes," Bracken replied. "Before claiming, before promises, before anything that binds too tightly too fast." Maeve nodded slowly. "I don't want to lose myself to this." Bracken's gaze sharpened, steady and certain. "You won't. That's not the bond I would accept." The certainty in his voice anchored something inside her. Not possession, not demand, choice. They stood there as the light shifted, shadows lengthening across the forest floor. When Maeve finally turned to leave, there was no ache in her chest, only steadiness. "Tomorrow?" she asked. Bracken inclined his head. "Tomorrow." As Maeve walked back toward her clan's land, she understood something fundamental had changed. She was no longer waiting to be chosen. She was choosing. Chapter 14. Close enough to choose. The forest was warm that evening, not with heat, but with the lingering breath of a day that had been kind to the land. The scent of sun-warm pine and crushed leaves lingered in the air as Maeve followed the border path once more, her steps unhurried, her thoughts quiet. She did not armor herself this time. The decision had been instinctive rather than deliberate. No blade at her side, no leather to remind her of duty. She wore only a simple cloak and the confidence of knowing exactly where she stood and why. Bracken sensed her before she spoke. He turned from the tree line as she approached, eyes darkening slightly as the bond stirred between them. Not flaring, not demanding, responding. "You're unarmed," he observed. Maeve nodded. "I'm not here as a guard tonight." Bracken studied her for a long moment, then inclined his head. "Neither am I." The border lay between them, as it always had, but tonight it felt thinner somehow, less absolute. Maeve stepped closer, stopping where the ground softened beneath her boots, the familiar warmth blooming in her chest. Bracken mirrored her movement from his side. They stood closer now than they ever had, close enough that Maeve could see the faint flecks of amber in his eyes, close enough that the forest seemed to recede, leaving only the space they shared. Her wolf lifted, calm but attentive, not pushing forward but pressing close to her awareness, like a steady presence at her back. "I keep thinking," Maeve said quietly, "that there will be a moment when this becomes unbearable." Bracken's expression softened. "And has it?" She considered the question honestly. "No." "Neither has it for me," he replied. "That's how I know we're doing this, right?" Maeve exhaled, a small smile touching her mouth. "I don't feel like I'm losing control." "You're not," Bracken said. "You're practicing it." The words settled into her, warm and grounding. A breeze stirred, lifting the edge of her cloak. Bracken's gaze followed the movement, then lifted back to her face, deliberate and respectful. Maeve felt the awareness of that restraint echo through the bond, steadying rather than igniting. She took one more step, not across the border, just closer to it. Her breath deepened as the warmth beneath her ribs brightened, the bond humming with quiet satisfaction. Bracken did not retreat. He did not advance. He waited. "Tell me to stop," Maeve said softly. Bracken's voice was low and even. "Only if you want me to." She shook her head. "I don't." They stood there, the space between them charged with unspent closeness. Maeve became acutely aware of the sound of his breathing, the steadiness of it, the way it matched her own without effort. This was temptation, not of the body, but of certainty. If she crossed now, the bond would respond. Not violently, not overwhelmingly, but fully. Maeve closed her eyes for a brief moment, grounding herself in the feel of the earth beneath her boots, the steady presence of her wolf, the choice still firmly her own. When she opened them again, Bracken was watching her, with unmistakable care. "Not yet," she said. Bracken nodded, acceptance immediate. "Whenever you're ready." The bond pulsed warmly, approving not of action, but of restraint chosen together. They parted that night with no lingering ache, no sense of denial, only the quiet certainty that closeness did not have to be claimed to be real. As Maeve walked back through the forest, she realized something that made her chest ache with a strange, gentle joy. Waiting was no longer about fear of consequence. It was about respect. Chapter 15. When Waiting is Tested. The howl came just before dusk. It was distant, carried on the wind in a way that made Maeve still mid-step, her senses sharpening instantly. Not a challenge, not a warning, a summons. Her wolf lifted, attention snapping outward, muscles tightening beneath her skin. Maeve turned toward the sound, heart pounding, not with fear but with recognition of what it meant. That howl did not belong to her clan, nor to Bracken's. She was already moving when Edrin caught up to her, expression grim. Scouts spotted movement near the lower ravine. Not Thorn Vale. Maeve nodded. "Rogues." "Yes," he said, "and they're moving fast." The forest shifted as patrols mobilized, the quiet discipline of wolves preparing for conflict, settling into place. Maeve felt the bond stir sharply now, not calm, not waiting, alert. Bracken, she thought, not calling, not reaching, simply aware. She ran the border path with practiced ease, breath steady, senses stretched wide. The scent reached her before sight did, unfamiliar, sharp, carrying the restless edge of wolves without territory or allegiance. Dangerous! She reached the border just as movement flickered through the trees. Bracken was already there. He stood at the edge of his land, posture taut, eyes focused on the ravine beyond. His wolf pressed close beneath his skin, powerful and ready. "They crossed earlier than expected," he said. "My clan tracked them from the north." Maeve's jaw tightened. "Mine caught their trail at dawn." For the first time, the border between them felt less important than what lay beyond it. Another howl echoed. Closer now. Maeve did not hesitate. She stepped across the line. The moment her boot touched Bracken's land, the bond surged. Not violently, not possessively, but with profound rightness. The warmth beneath her ribs flared bright and steady, her wolf rising fully, not fighting her control, but aligning with it. Bracken inhaled sharply, eyes darkening. "You're sure?" he said. "Yes," Maeve replied. "This isn't about us anymore." He nodded once. Together they shifted. The transformation flowed through Maeve like breath released, bones realigning smoothly, muscle reshaping without pain, the world sharpening as she dropped to all fours. Her wolf emerged fully into the night, senses blazing, strength grounded and sure. Across from her, Bracken's wolf stood massive and steady, dark coat rippling as he settled into the form that had always been waiting beneath his skin. No distortion, no violence, only truth revealed. They moved without command, without hesitation, running side by side toward the ravine, the forest opening beneath their strides as if recognizing them. The rogue wolves were fewer than Maeve expected, desperate rather than organized, driven by hunger and fractured loyalty. The confrontation was swift, efficient, controlled. Maeve's wolf did not revel in the clash. Neither did Bracken's. They drove the rogues back together, flanking with instinctive coordination that felt ancient and effortless, as if they had always known how to move as one. When it was over, the forest went still. Maeve shifted back first, breath coming fast but steady, adrenaline fading into awareness. Bracken followed moments later, human once more, eyes searching her face immediately. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." He exhaled, relief unmistakable. Behind them, wolves from both clans emerged cautiously into the clearing. Elders, scouts, warriors alike, drawn by the echo of the conflict. They saw everything. Maeve standing on Thornvale land, Bracken at her side, the bond no longer hidden. No one spoke. Maeve met their gazes without flinching, heart steady, wolf calm beneath her skin. "This is what waiting was for," she said quietly, "so that when we chose, it would be for the right reason." Silence held. Then Althea stepped forward. "You defended land that was not your own," she said to Maeve. Maeve lifted her chin. "I defended wolves." Althea studied her for a long moment, then turned to Bracken. "And you allowed her to stand beside you." Bracken met her gaze evenly. "I trusted her." The forest seemed to breathe again. What had been tested had not broken. It had proven itself. Chapter 16. What Remains. They did not celebrate. That, more than anything, told Maeve the night had changed something fundamental. The wolves gathered at the edge of the clearing in quiet clusters, voices low, movements measured. No one argued. No one challenged what had happened. The forest itself seemed to hold the moment gently, as if giving them time to understand what they had witnessed. Maeve stood where she was, shoulders squared, heart steady. The bond rested beneath her ribs like something finally allowed to be whole, not roaring, not demanding, simply present. Bracken remained at her side, close enough that she could feel his warmth without needing to touch. He did not reach for her. He did not stake a claim. He stayed. Althea approached first, her steps slow, eyes sharp but thoughtful. "You crossed the border," she said to Maeve. Not accusation, fact. "Yes," Maeve replied. "And you did not lose yourself," Althea continued. "No," Maeve said again. Althea's gaze moved to Bracken. "You allowed it." "I trusted her," Bracken said simply. That word settled heavily into the clearing. Trust, not conquest, not dominance, not fear. Elder Rin stepped forward then, gaze flicking between the two of them. "The bond did not weaken either of you," he observed. "It strengthened you." Maeve felt her wolf stir softly, not in pride, but in agreement. "Some lines were drawn in blood," Althea said quietly, "and some were kept long after the reason for them was forgotten." Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, she inclined her head. Not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "This bond will be watched," she said. "It will be questioned, and it will not be easy." Maeve met her gaze evenly. "Nothing worth keeping ever is." A faint smile tugged at the corner of Althea's mouth before she turned away. The Thorned Vale elders followed shortly after, murmuring quietly among themselves. Rowan paused as he passed Bracken, clapping a hand briefly against his shoulder. "You always did choose the hard path," Rowan said. Bracken huffed a quiet breath. "Someone has to walk it first." The clearing emptied slowly until only forest and moonlight remained. Maeve exhaled at last, the tension of the night loosening from her shoulders. "We didn't plan this," she said softly. Bracken looked at her, something warm and steady in his eyes. "No, we prepared for it." She smiled, small, genuine, unguarded. They stood together in the quiet aftermath, neither rushing to define what came next. The bond no longer felt like a question. It felt like a foundation. "I don't know what this looks like," Maeve admitted. Bracken's gaze softened. "Neither do I. But I know what it feels like." She turned to him then, finally closing the space between them. Not rushing, not claiming, just choosing. The forest accepted them without comment. And for the first time in longer than Maeve could remember, the border did not feel like a warning. It felt like a beginning.